Hello and welcome to our 7:30 news bulletin coming to you from our Bishop Navy Media Center. And today you're with me, Bridget Manoka. The top stories. Cardinal Zuppi visits Washington, D.C. as part of peace mission for Ukraine. Malawi Law Society calls for clearance on procurement of fertilizer. Malawi welcomes the first private sector-owned medical waste treatment plant. And elsewhere, Sudanese Rapid Support Force takes control of South Darfur town, sparking crashes and displacement. We have these and many more. Do stay with us. Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, the Italian prelate tasked by Pope Francis to head a peace mission between Ukraine and Russia, is visiting Washington, D.C. this week as part of a peace mission for Ukraine. The announcement was followed by confirmation from the White House that Cardinal Zuppi will meet the president, that's Joe Biden, to discuss issues related to the war in Ukraine. Bernard Manza reading a Vatican News report.
The Cardinal's visit comes only weeks after the Biden administration announced it was sending an additional $800 million in weapons to aid Ukraine's counter-offensive, including morally problematic cluster bombs that have been banned by most countries, including the Holy See. Cardinal Zuppi, who has already visited both Ukraine and Russia, will be in the U.S. capital from July 17th to 19th and will be accompanied by an official from the Vatican's Secretariat of State. As part of the peacekeeping mission, Cardinal Zuppi also visited the Ukrainian capital of Kiev from 5th to 6th June this year, where he met with President Volodymyr Zelensky and several other high-level officials. The White House issued a statement on Monday announcing the issues on the agenda for the meeting between Zuppi and Biden. Among others, it seeks to facilitate the exchange of ideas and opinions regarding the current tragic situation, as well as to provide support for humanitarian initiatives aimed at alleviating the suffering of the most vulnerable people, particularly the children.
The High Court in Malawi has adjourned proceedings in the same-sex law case until late next month. The adjournment is to allow all parties to make both written and oral submissions in the case. Wim Axter, a Dutch national, and Jana Gomani want the court, which is sitting as a constitutional court, to allow same-sex unions. We have a report.
The state, supported by faith groups who joined the case as friends of the court, has been objecting to the claimant's demands to review the sex laws that criminalize same-sex marriages. Before the adjournment of the case, the Attorney General, Thabo Chakaka Nyirenda, re-examined the state witness, lawyer Samson Chisanga, who is a state prosecutor at State Advocate Chambers in Luntha. This followed a cross-examination by the first applicant, Wemster Axter, a Dutch nationalist lawyer, Bob Chinkango. During the cross-examination, the state witness had testified that the accused has been sexually abusing students who were receiving funds from the institution which she works for. The witnesses had told the court plainly that Axter had sodomized them several times before the matter was reported to police. But Axter has pleaded not guilty to the charges of sodomizing and sexually abusing the students. 3 High Court judges, namely Joseph Chigona, Chambizani Kacheche, and Vikochi Chima, are presiding over the case. Homosexuality is an offense in Malawi and punishable by a maximum prison sentence of 14 years.
In a related development, religious leaders from Balaka district have expressed their frustrations against the homosexuality in the country through peaceful demonstrations that were organized by the Pastors Fraternity, a religious grouping in the district. The leaders from both Muslim and Christian congregations led their followers in a march that started from St. Louis Montfort Church to the district council, where Peter Chiumbuzo received their petition on behalf of the district commissioner, Darwin Mungoli. From Balaka, here is Rashida Matandika.
The crowd looked excited, taking the adventure, marching against what they call abomination towards God's creations and plans for man. With placards carrying different messages against the minority groups of men, women, and institutions that are claiming to fight for their rights to promote homosexuality, the crowd walked and danced all the way to the district commissioner's office, demanding that no such rights should be granted to the minority groups. Speaking after presenting the petition, Father Paul Only Mashonga of the Catholic Church said, as religious leaders, their solidarity march was to emphasize that they aim to promote what God intended to have a union of man and woman. He said, as problematic as the act is, the solution is not to institutionalize it because it is a selfish decision.
What we are against is to institutionalize such kind of practice. If there is a defect, if there is a problem, whatever, you don't have to institutionalize it. Why do you have to bring it to the parliament or try to bring some laws or so to protect them? Why do we have to do that? If that was the case, then some of these practices that are being practiced by some individuals or some cultures would have also said, take them to the parliament so they can sign a law and whatever. So there are some selfish intentions behind whatever is being done.
Sheikh Abdurrahman Angajef of Muslim Association of Malawi in the district said the act is just a way of destroying what God created.
The Almighty created Adam. When Adam was created, he had some problems in Eden. One of the problems was loneliness. And it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah the Almighty, who observed this and nobody else. And Allah decided to give him or to sort out his problem, and that was by looking into whatever the way he considered. And what Allah did was to create a woman for him. He created a woman so that he should help Adam, because Allah knew that there is somewhere Adam will manage to do this, will manage to do that, but in one way or the other, he will fail to do one thing. And it is the woman who is to come, so that you should give support to that one.
The chairperson of Pastors Fraternal, Pastor Harry Smith, said they are going to intensify teachings against the act in their churches so that parents and guardians should be on guard on what their children are going through.
This is an abomination to God, and this is a sin. Maybe they are saying that this is minority rights, but sin is a sin. You cannot say this is a small sin and this is a big sin, but this is sin. And before God is sin, and this is an abomination to God.
In his remarks after receiving the petition on behalf of the district commissioner, Peter Chiumbuzo said they will send the petition to the right destination.
District council is just an arm of government. Now we've actually received this petition on behalf of government, and as district council, what we will do it is actually to forward the same to the office of president and cabinet. So when the DC comes, what we'll do is to scan the documents and send them to Office of President and Cabinet.
The religious leaders say they will not bow down to the battle and will continue to fight it even in spirit through prayers. Rashida Matandika, Luntha TV, Balaka.
The Malawi Law Society has joined the forces pushing some state institutions to probe more processes that were used in the fertilizer procurement deal between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Romanian company East Bridge. In an interview, Malawi Law Society President Patrick Mpaka said they have written the Office of the Attorney General, Anti-Corruption Bureau ACB, and Director of Public Prosecutions DPP to investigate Ministry of Agriculture officials on how the agreement was reached. Charite Chiranga compiled a report which is read by Tandiwe Mzumara.
The fertilizer procurement deal between Malawi government and East Bridges State in an exchange agreement has taken a new twist as Malawi Law Society is now asking the Office of the Attorney General, ACB, and DPP to launch an investigation into legal processes surrounding the deal. Malawi Law Society President Patrick Mbaka questions the procedure that was followed to come up with such a deal in line with the procurement procedures.
The document that we have developed is quite long. It's 23 pages, and so we thought that the authorities, we are pointing out to the gaps and the possible places that they may want to look at. We think that there is need for further check on the compliance with the law. That's why we thought on this occasion we should direct the right to the authorities to point them to some of the spaces that we were able to see, since we ourselves are also using information that is just within the public domain.
Governance commentator Willie Kambwandira has held the lawyers' governing body for the move as it raises questions on how the deal was reached.
We are also equally concerned. There are so many unanswered questions and apparent violations of our procurement laws and procedures. So the move is in the public interest, and we commend the Malawi Law Society for seeking answers from the law enforcement agencies, because for us the deal raises serious accountability questions and smart levels of corruption.
Meanwhile, government is reporting that it has already procured fertilizer for the 2023 Affordable Imports Program, AIP.
Government of Malawi says that the desire of the South Korean government to open a permanent residency embassy in the country will help to forge trade and bilateral relations between the two countries. Minister of Trade and Industry Simplex Banda made the remarks in Lilongwe on Monday when he met Korean representative for Africa in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Hong Jin-wook, and his delegation. According to Banda, Malawi can benefit from the South Korea success transformation story from poverty to a prosperity. More in this report.
In his remarks, the president of SK Group, which is a South Korean second largest conglomerate with more than 175 operating companies with an annual turnover of $139 billion and more than 10,000 employees globally, said that there are challenges in Malawi, as is elsewhere, but the challenges can be turned into opportunities. He said that there is no reason why South Korean brands cannot be manufactured and assembled right here in Malawi, as is done in other African countries. Hong Jin-wook said South Korea attaches a greater degree of importance to its relationship with Malawi, hence its delegation, comprised of both public and private sectors representatives, to forge bilateral and trade ties with the country. He said he has formally invited Malawi to attend the Korea-Africa Summit next year and the World Expo 2030, which it is vying to host. The diplomatic relations between Malawi and South Korea date back to 1965, and there are several South Korean nationals working and living in Malawi. For Luntha Television News, this is Jacqueline Saidi.
You're still watching our 7:30 news bulletin, but before we proceed, let's take a look at our top stories once more. Cardinal Zuppi visits Washington, D.C. as part of peace mission for Ukraine. Malawi Law Society calls for clearance on procurement of fertilizer. Malawi welcomes the first private sector-owned medical waste treatment plant. And elsewhere, Sudanese Rapid Support Force takes control of South Darfur town, sparking crashes and displacement. Moving on, a consortium of youth organizations, Youth Decide campaign, has advised government to consider working collaboratively with the stakeholders to ensure effective implementation of youth-related agendas. The grouping, through its leader, Charles Kajoloweka, has faulted the government's commitment towards improving the welfare of youths in the country, observing that most of the promises that the Tonse administration made to the youth during campaign period have not been fulfilled, and a lot of youths in the country are staying idle. Kajoloweka also notes that government is yet to implement some of the recommendations made during the 2022 National Youth Conference. Tandiwe Mzumara compiled this report.
Youth Decide campaign leader, who is also the executive director for Youth and Society, Charles Kajoloweka, notes that despite several recommendations made to government through the National Youth Conference last year and endorsement of the National Youth Manifesto by the government, the country is still lagging in the implementation part as young people continue to face several burdens, which include poverty, unemployment, and widening inequality gaps. According to Kajoloweka, there is still no clear or any solid plan on the promised 1 million jobs as there continues high level of unemployment in Malawi and a lot of youths are still struggling. He went further to advise government to consider close collaboration with stakeholders so as to boost the implementation rate of the recommendations made in the manifesto and at the National Youth Conference last year.
We would not confidently say they have been implemented because we have given ourselves time to do an evaluation of the implementation space of the resolutions of the conference. And as a campaign, we will be reviewing the progress made so far.
Meanwhile, Kajoloweka has disclosed of plans by Youth Decide campaign to host a second National Youth Conference this September in Lilongwe. The conference creates a platform where government and young people can interrogate on the state of governance but also youth development in the country. For Luntha News, this is Tandiwe Mzumara.
The Southern Africa Development Community, SADC, in collaboration with the European Union and the German government, have launched the first private sector-owned medical and pharmaceutical waste treatment plant in Lilongwe under the Mitch Investment, which is a Malawian company. The company's chief executive officer, Mese Chamalire, said that this is a milestone that will enable Malawi to showcase that the country can respond to the pressing medical waste challenges. More in this report by Falesi Chizombe.
In 2022, the support towards industrialization of the productive sectors program provided a grant of €183,000 to Mitch Investments to set up the first privately owned and operated medical waste treatment facility in the country. The facility seeks to dispose of medical waste by using environmentally friendly high-temperature pyrolysis technology. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Malawi generated about 45,000 tons of medical waste annually. According to Caricius Tulaife, the acting director for industrial development and trade at the SADC Secretariat, prioritized industrialization and regional integration through targeted approaches in pharmaceutical, mineral, and agro-processing, and that the newly plant will go a long way in addressing challenges of industrial waste production and management of waste. On his part, Ivo Hofkens, who is the head of cooperation at the EU delegation in Malawi, said the project reflects not only the coincidence on policy views for the two regions, European Union and SADC, but also the importance of empowering women and of how waste management has an impact on public health. The SIPS program has awarded 24 grant agreements in 8 SADC member states, totaling €3.1 million, with each grant ranging between €50,000 to €200,000 for small and medium-sized enterprises state-owned companies and academic institutions. Meanwhile, Mitch Investment, through its Chief Executive Officer, Mese Chamwalira, has stated that this is an essential milestone in working towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Insufficient waste disposal facilities led to improper management of hazardous medical waste, often leading to open landfilling burning.
And finally, another force fighting against the army in Sudan has taken control of a town in South Darfur with further reports of human rights abuses. Clashes between the Rapid Support Forces (RSF) and the army have forced several thousand families to flee the town of Kasi. There are reports of RSF fighters looting or destroying government buildings and markets, among others. Bernard Mwanza reading a BBC report.
Since the war broke out in mid-April, non-Arab communities across Darfur have been targeted by the RSF and allied Arab militias. Heavy fighting is continuing in the capital Khartoum and several other areas as regional and international mediation efforts continue to end the conflict. A similar pattern of ethnic violence took place 2 decades ago when militias were deployed to crush a rebellion that war left around 300,000 people dead. The RSF said that it had taken control of an army base in Kars, seizing vehicles and weapons and capturing 30 soldiers as part of the wider conflict. The Darfur Bar Association, an activist group that monitors the conflict, condemned what it called an attack on Kars by the RSF that had led to looting and theft. On Friday, the US-based Sudan Conflict Observatory reported that the RSF and aligned forces had allegedly carried out the targeted destruction of at least 26 communities in Darfur, forcibly displacing at least 666,000 civilians since mid-April. It said that the pattern of the attacks, primarily against non-Arab communities, was identical to those deployed by Sudan's government and the allied Janjaweed missions in 2003 to 2004, when mass atrocities were committed as they fought to crush a rebellion.
That BBC report, read by Bernard Mwanza, concludes our news bulletin today. But before we go, let's take another look at our top stories. Cardinal Zuppi visits Washington, D.C. as part of peace mission for Ukraine. Malawi Law Society calls for clearance on procurement of fertilizer. Malawi welcomes the first private sector-owned medical waste treatment plant. And elsewhere, Sudanese Rapid Support Force takes control of South Darfur town, sparking crashes and displacement. That will be all from me, Bridget Manoga, and the rest of the newsroom. Thank you for choosing Luntha Television. Stay blessed.